Welcome to another Sigmalive Hangout. Today we're discussing culture, but not as plain as that. Culture, politics, civilization, all together rolled into one. We're discussing today with Jevan. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name. I don't want to butcher it. I think it's disrespectful to do that, especially when one has such a beautiful work. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm well, thanks. Hello.
Thank you for giving us some of your time. You're in UK right now.
I am. Yeah.
You're working on your project, which is Moving Cities. It's a project that I follow for quite some time now, but I'm not sure our viewers do. Would you like to explain what Moving Cities is?
It's a collection of films. It's that transcribe cities using dance, using physical movement. Instead of talking about them, instead of writing about them, we're taking these global cities and trying to understand them through something a little simpler, a little more emotional. Cities are just incredible places at the moment, and I don't see how this hasn't already happened. Yeah, so that's the premise behind it.
Sometimes artists try to put together two very different things. If something is in motion, they try to put next to it something that is quite still to show the difference and maybe accentuate some of the features of one or the other. But in your case, in your stories, you go into very busy cities, in very busy sceneries, where there's plenty of movement, and you add movement on top of that. That was quite astonishing to me.
Yeah, it's I mean, I was born in London, and there is a symphony, there is a harmony to all these things that move around. If you've ever seen one of these kind of aerial films of the planet moving around and the clouds, and then you might have seen ones where they show traffic and people moving. There is a kind of pattern to it. It does look orchestrated. So knowing that, I thought, well, if you put someone on the street, can they tap into the movement that is already happening? You know, the bus, the car, and the train, they don't really have a relationship. No one has choreographed them, but somehow, when you set a dancer against them at the right angle, there is this kind of really weird magical event that happens. And I mean, that's exactly what happens on camera. We don't spend too long figuring out the angle. It's just a question of marrying up all these things, knowing where to put certain people.
We're watching footage
it's
from
like
the
an
film
exploration almost.
We're watching footage from the film that you produced in Athens, and that was quite interesting because you have a noisy and somewhat dirty capital city. And you have these beautiful, clean ballerinas, but then you have dancers doing contemporary, which is quite the opposite of what ballerinas do. It's not as structured. But then you have some traditional dancing as well, and then you even got dancers pretending to be protesters, or I wasn't quite sure what that was. How do you conceptualize what you're gonna do? How do you choose the types of dances that you're gonna include? How do you choose the dancers? How do you choose locations?
We cast dancers in the same way you cast actors. There's got to be some kind of professional line, and the dancers who turned up normally a lot of they're used to being choreographed, given set pieces, set sequences, but this was the opposite. They are asked to be themselves. They are asked to respond personally. They are given very little direction, which can be liberating. It can be challenging, but it's also hugely liberating. And
I could imagine it's liberating for the dancers themselves, but for you as a director, that might be more challenging than freeing.
I mean, I'm framing it. I'm controlling the speed. I'm controlling this position, the location, the angle, and often they'll come with ideas and choreography, but we temper that down to what's appropriate for the location. They'll come with like a set of phrases, and we'll say, well, that's too. in essence, what we do is we take the performance out of what they bring. A lot of them bring things which involve looking at the camera a lot, and we kind of strip all that down. It's very much, we're trying to go for a very internal performance.
But the idea to incorporate traditional dancing of each country that you go into for the city, because I've seen in other cities as well, you put traditional and folkloric elements as well. And the idea, especially in Athens, to put dancer protesters, how did that come about?
When you say dancers protesters, do you mean the two guys in Piraeus?
No, I mean the three guys standing up dancing, and they have the heavy wear and they have the helmet on their on their hand.
Okay, so they are three girls, and that was their concept. They came with the concept of wearing their own bicycle helmets. It wasn't meant to look like a protest, and then we filmed it, and then we realized when we filmed it that it gave that impression. So I don't want to say it was a happy coincidence, but it's one of those things that when you allow yourself to play a little bit, when you allow the creative slack to happen, that kind of just naturally happens, because that at the time was the brief they were given. It's to come with something personal.
As a Greek Cypriot, watching the film, it gave me a lot of nuances and a lot of messages, or I saw it like that. Let's say the dancers on the rock up high overlooking Athens, showing how they might be low but they can stand up again, how they can be in accordance and and sync, and then putting art back into abandoned or ancient amphitheaters, or that you can find art in everything and anything blunt in the city that is being challenged right now. The people are being challenged in Greece, in Athens, and that gave it a whole new perspective. Did you have a grasp of that when you were filming the certain film?
Yeah, very much so. I think everyone who was involved. I mean, there was 3 partner organisations. There was obviously the dancers, and there was a lot of personal relationships established, and it was difficult not to get a grasp of that. But in a kind of, in a kind of a very heartfelt way. There wasn't much anger about. I mean, I'm sure there is, but that didn't come through. If anything, it was a very positive experience, and again, that's because we're taking language out of the process, and it's the whole thing's silent.
Yeah, and it was beautiful. It really was beautiful, as all the films were. But how do you choose the cities that you're gonna visit and produce in? How did you choose Athens? How did you choose, if I'm not mistaken, Yerevan? I'm not sure.
I chose Athens because there's a lot of press right now, and over here we read the papers and we see the news and are very wary that there is very much an agenda in a lot of the media that's out there. So this is a kind of a more honest, personal response. It's by no means is it a political statement or some kind of there is no goal to try and say something about what's going on. But it kind of contradicts. I feel when I watch it, it contradicts everything that is being said in a lot of ways. There is no, it just reminds you that these are just normal, real people, and it's just not a number, and it's just not a collection of or a group as labelled in the news.
So, any plans of coming to Cyprus to film? Nicosia is a unique city as well.
It looks like I've got a partner. I'm talking to a potential Cypriot partner. I'd love to come, yeah.
What would be your take on Nicosia?
So one of the things that we do first is do a whole lot of research, but not research as in kind of online research, but research as in we just talk to a lot of people and see what is being thought at the moment about this place. The projects are very much about now. It has nothing. We don't try and tap into something that has happened in history. It's about what is going on there right now, which is why we use urban landscapes, because that is now. We try not to go to places of mass tourism, because that isn't that in some way it just isn't as relevant. But my plans for Cyprus is to do a whole lot of research. If it does happen, that would be the plan.
Well, keep us informed and involved with that. But before we close, you entitle your project Moving Cities. Could I interpret that as moving cities forward, moving cities away from the black and white and putting some art back into it?
The core idea behind it is that the cities are becoming like machines.
Mm-hmm.
They're becoming mechanical, and there isn't many things within cities that don't move. The point of placing the dancer in there is to somehow compose it, somehow take back the control of all this chaotic movement, and harmonize it into one piece. It would be really difficult for you to try and choreograph everything in that camera's sight, and you kind of don't have to. It just kind of happens automatically, given the right angle and given the right positioning.
Thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to hosting you here in Cyprus and looking at the end product in Nicosia soon.
Yeah, me too. No, that'd be great. Yeah, keep in touch.
Thank you, and thank you for watching.